Okay, I want to talk for a handful of minutes. I want to steal a handful of minutes from you to talk about the historical, cultural, and literary contexts. Yay! I have observed a phenomenon in grading these Second Samuel Bible studies. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to burp. I didn't want to do it in the mic. There is a recurring um, um, phenomenon. I just use that word, but I can't think of any other better word. Um, and that phenomenon is that the section historical, cultural context, literary contexts is evidently not clear to you. And that's on me. It's not your fault. It's on me because we have talked about it. I've tried to illustrate it, but I don't think it's been just basic enough. And you know, I should have done this at the beginning, but it doesn't matter because you got credit for what you've done, and you know, it's water under the bridge. But going forward, I want to make sure that you are clearly um, knowledgeable, or that there's clarity on the difference between literary context and historical cultural context. What I have discovered more than anything is the uh, historical context information is actually literary context information, and I think that'll become a bit clearer as we go forward. So let me get off the eraser. Let me change from pink to, yes, I like pink. So I usually write in pink, believe it or not. Okay, so let's pretend for a moment, and you know how much I like to draw. So here's some more what would essentially be stick art. Let's imagine that that this rectangle is the Bible. It's the text of Scripture. And you know, there's 66 books. It's a large book. And what we've done is we have chosen paragraphs, small bite-size sections to practice the skill of drawing the correct information out of the Bible so that we don't misinterpret or talk about the Bible in ways that don't respect the challenge of actually understanding it. And so that's our, you know, that's the purpose of our Bible studies, really. At one level, it's just to be a humbling experience, that you'll go away from class understanding and appreciating the challenge of reading the Bible well. Well, you know that by now. So let's just, in this case, take the E and let's pretend that is one of our paragraphs. In fact, let's pretend that it's the Second Samuel passage. Okay, so this is the Second Samuel passage. So when we talk about literary context, when we talk about the literary context, we are talking about what is in the text. I don't like that. Sorry. What is in the text? We are studying, our task is to investigate how our paragraph is situated inside this chapter, book, whatever. And so we look from what has just been said or what has come before, and we look at what follows, so we can better understand the situation of the paragraph. Situation means context. Um, and what I've found is that for the historical section, a lot of it has actually been literary. So somebody might say in their historical section, First Samuel is about David, or sorry, First Samuel is about Saul, and Second Samuel is about David, and the kingdom of Saul didn't last very long. He wasn't a great king, but now David comes along, and he's kind of the opposite of Saul. And now we have Second Samuel 7. That is a historical discussion per se, but it's a historical discussion within the Bible, which means it's a part of the literary context, not the historical context. The other side of it is the historical cultural context. Historical cultural. And with the historical cultural study, here we're taking something from inside the text and bringing it outside the Bible into the world of the Bible. Into the world of the Bible. The world of the Bible. That's not necessarily like world, but you heard me say that. And we're taking some concept or idea or practice, and we are taking that and we're putting it into the world of the Bible so that we can understand better the setting historically, in the world. What does this text mean in its situation in the first, what would be 10th century BC. So one of the things that is helpful is to look inside a commentary to see if they mention anything that that seems like a good candidate for historical cultural study. So in this case, Second Samuel, one student chose what's called the Davidic covenant. I imagine that they went to Second Samuel 7 in a commentary, and they saw the concept of the Davidic covenant. And they thought to themselves, covenant is an important word. It's not necessarily directly mentioned in the text, but the relationship between God and David is a covenant relationship. It is like a treaty. Now, you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't get this out of the text yourself. So you lean on others. Anyway, the point is that we have this concept of the Davidic covenant. Now, on our Story of the Bible, Kingdom Story of the Bible chart, there is this row that says covenants. And in that row, you have a Noahic covenant, which is a covenant with Noah, the rainbow thing. You have a covenant with Abraham. That's Genesis 12, which we've studied, where God tells Abraham, he's going to bless him. And then if you look at the restating of that in chapter 15, it even becomes more clear the covenant nature of that. So that's a Abraham covenant. And then we looked at another covenant, the Sinai covenant, or the Israelite covenant, when Moses bring the Torah to the people of Israel. This was the establishment of a covenant. God said, "Here's what I'm going to do, and here's what you're going to do." And they said, "Okay, great, we will. You'll be our God, and we'll be your people." And now we come to um, another covenant, and that covenant is the Davidic covenant. It is the relationship God established with the Davidic dynasty, that there will always be a son on the throne. And this will be an everlasting fact. So anyway, okay, so Davidic covenant, my idea is that you're not going to get this yourself, just, why is this doing this? Okay, here we go. You're not going to get this yourself because, understandably, this is not something you're versed in. But the hope here is that you'll kind of be exposed to the nature of the Bible's text. It's literary, it's historical. Okay, so Davidic covenant. So you get that from a commentary, and it seems like it's significant. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's prophecy, because Nathan's a prophet. Maybe it's temple. Maybe it's temple. So any one of those things, prophet, temple, Davidic covenant. So you would take one of these and you would go to a Bible dictionary. So I have a Bible dictionary that we're going to look at here that will give us the information we need. Now, this is the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary. It's 5 volumes. It's in the library. I wish I could give you this, this electronic Bible dictionary, but I can't. It's not. It can't be shared. So that's a bummer. But if you went to the Bible dictionary and you looked up Davidic covenant, you would find this entry. You'd have a summary statement at the top, and then you have these sections from A to G that develop the and explain the Davidic covenant and put it in its historical cultural context. So just to look at this line, which captures it, the Davidic covenant refers to God's promise to David, the king, to preserve his dynasty forever, right? That's 2 Samuel 7 right there. There are psalms, royal psalms, which you'll read, which make it abundantly clear. I have made a covenant with my chosen one. So if we kind of read through this, some of this will be just summarizing perhaps the story, but if we look here, as David enjoyed a period of rest after the struggles that brought him to the throne, he contemplated building a house, a temple for Yahweh. The prophet Nathan came to him with a message from the Lord. Several points are worth noting. The oracle was delivered through a prophet, a spokesman of Yahweh, so the prophet's words would be recognized as authoritative. This was a point of continuity with older tradition. The oracle makes very clear that the source of David's position and authority is only Yahweh and the God of Israel, who led the Israelites out of Egypt and established a covenant at Sinai. There's the Sinai covenant. And it is Yahweh alone who chooses and appoints and raises up kingship. 3, Yahweh promises two things: land and dynasty. And the father-son imagery familiar from the ancient Near East kingship is used. So father-son imagery, that's something I didn't even think of, but the father-son. And that's something from the ancient Near Eastern kingship. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. That is a historical, cultural piece of information. There's not very much there in that point, but perhaps more will be developed later. So here you have then here the model of the royal grant. The type of covenant represented here has parallels elsewhere in the ancient Near East. These have been described as covenant of royal grant. And then there's a reference here to a discussion in another work, and attested in Hittite and Syro-Palestinian areas. See also covenant, another place to go for more information. They were gifts bestowed by a king upon individuals who had loyalty served their masters, who have loyally served their masters. Parallels to the Davidic covenant in form and vocabulary are striking. So this that guy right there is that's a good word right there. I don't like that though. See, that gives you cultural information, historical cultural information, and so we could keep going. Influence of the Southern traditions. Another area where the importance of Davidic covenant can be noted is its influence in the Pentateuchal traditions. This gets into a bit more of a complicated discussion here of the influence of Southern traditions, relation to the Mosaic covenant. So your main thing historic cultural thing is this paragraph right here. Now let me go here. Do I have something? No resource is in your library. These resources are available for purchase. Oh, okay, I don't have that. But I do have covenant. So the Davidic charter, what's that do? In view of the significant Amorite cultural influences in the city of Jerusalem itself, there's little reason to doubt that the prophet Nathan is proclaiming the divine promise to David, and at the outset of the monarchic period was simply applying the age-old Amorite political theology of Jebus, now Jerusalem, to its new king. The historical conditions that brought about this fateful ideological development are clearly described, but typically the connections are not delineated. An ancient writer assumes that everyone knew the connections. David had first become king by two distinct covenants enacted by two major demographic groups. There are no reasons. I just jumped on it. There are no reasons. There were two reasons it was politically necessary subsequently to promote an additional divine covenant that superseded these earlier ones. First, there had been no ideological resolution of the latent conflict between the North and the South. Okay, this is more or less just summarizing the story. Let's see if there's any more about the actual covenant itself. The divine charter theology and literary motif are classified as a covenant in the biblical tradition simply because in these three traditions of promises, David, Abraham, and Noah, it is Yahweh who swears to perform certain acts for the benefit of the recipient and his descendants in perpetuity. In all three cases, the recipient is not bound by oath, though it is clear that in the case of the Davidic Charter, later tradition attempted lamely to introduce a concept of accompanying traditions. accompanying conditions. I'm not seeing a lot of discussion here about the reprobation. Let's read this reprobation. Despite whatever attempts the Hebrew prophets had to the old ideology, here's some cases. The dates of the few prophetic allusions to the Davidic dynasty and its privileged position have been the subject of much debate. It is clear, however, that regardless of the dates, they have a significantly different point of reference than the two major Davidic charter texts. For example, Micah's vision of David's Revidus, clearly Well, that was a complete waste of time. But we did find information on, the type of covenants. I just wonder, maybe it's we looked at the wrong one. But I know this has taken a bunch of time. No. Okay. Enough is enough. The point is that when you do a historical study, you are going out. No, I want a bigger one. You're going out, but you're coming back in too. You go out of the text, and what you learn out here, then you bring back into here, which helps you understand the passage better. Whereas with the literary context is inside, and you study what comes before and what comes after. Now, I'm just thinking about the complete disaster that was looking at that those dictionaries, and I'm just undermined my whole point. But alas, we did come away with two historical elements. The father-son imagery is part of an ancient kingship ideology, and the covenant is like the royal grant covenants. And I wonder if I went back, and after this is done, I'm going to go back. If I went back and I searched royal grant covenants, if it would take me to something. That is what I'm interested in doing, and I'll let you know. Okay, well, you've been a great audience. I've taken enough of your time. So, see ya.